Toast Bites. Chomp.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Toast Bites, where we take a look at some of the awesome indie games I've played that didn't get a standalone video on my channel. As always, a link to each game is in the description, and if you're on a supported device or using the YouTube app, you can check out more episodes of Toast Bites by clicking the card icon above. Let's get into it!
Number 1.
Freedom Planet 2 is the perfect Sonic substitute for anyone who's gotta go fast, but wants something more than just platforming and speed. It's like an action-adventure game that just happens to play out across intricate, colorful maps full of clever enemies, hidden paths, and interactive elements that all mesh together so well, you'll forget that it also has great voice acting, music, and lore. The demo barely touched what this game is or will be, so I'll just cover the basics. There are 4 playable characters, each with their own special abilities and attacks, so don't expect that old Mario mechanic of bopping enemies on the head. This game includes real combat, and if you want to blast through levels without being slowed down by baddies, you'll want to get good at it. Which is fine, because the controls are super simple, and all of your abilities are so fluid that well-timed hits, jumps, and dashes can see you taking enemies down without detracting from the quick-paced games like this are known for. There's also a lot of thought put into each character's design, their individual traits, and how that's reflected in everything from their look to their fighting style, whether it's Carol's bare-knuckle brawling or Nera's frost power. Even the animation for each character's basic movements are different. They run differently, they even stand at rest differently, so you don't have to worry about choice. You'll definitely find a favorite. Now there are various game modes like Classic and Adventure where you can choose to jump right into the stages or follow a story respectively, complete with cutscenes and a world map to explore full of NPCs, treasures, and more. There's also a battle arena that offers a variety of challenges. And in addition to their core abilities, you can customize your character with power-up recipes that yield various boons or items you can equip. This installment in the series also introduces some new features like customizable difficulty. This is one of those momentum-based games that gets more satisfying the more you master it, yet doesn't need mastering to be fun. And if you do master it, you still won't get bored because there's so much more to do than speedrun. In short, Freedom Planet 2 is worth it for any fan of old-school, hot-foot platformers with a new-school twist. It isn't out yet, but you can play the demo on Steam, and since the devs aren't crowdfunding, you can support them with feedback or by picking up the first Freedom Planet, which I never played but is probably good.
Number 2.
If I told you I found a game with the atmosphere of Journey, the look of Breath of the Wild, and the intrigue of Inside, you'd be desperate to sink your teeth into that tasty dev morsel. By all accounts, The World Begins With You should be that game, but it's not, and I want to give it praise for coming this close before I get into why I think it falls short. The World Begins With You was an atmospheric adventure game with some puzzle platforming elements. It was originally submitted to the Six Wizard Game Jam, which is run by the Idle Thumbs community. I'll link to it in the description so you can learn more about it. And barring the handful of flaws I'm going to mention, I loved this game. It's probably the most cohesive endeavor I've seen come out of a jam in this genre. Full disclosure, I may have propped it up a bit with my description since it's a small game clocking in at 10 to 20 minutes tops, so don't go into it literally expecting Journey Inside the Wild Breath. But in terms of feel and aesthetic, perspective and reveal, all of the same beloved elements are there, just watered down to a tiny budget and playtime. The environments are rich and vivid, the lighting is evocative, the puzzles are varied but tight, and there's never a moment when I don't want to experience what's next. What kills the game for me is ironically the very thing the devs seem to have put a lot of thought into, and that's the camera controls, followed second by the clunky player movement and how those two things work against the world's impeccable design. That, coupled with the stylistic choice of intrusive assets in the foreground, which I otherwise enjoy and don't see nearly enough, took a lot away from the experience. A thing needs to be good at its purpose, and if the purpose of this game was to awe the player with scenic atmosphere, it achieved that in spades. But if the goal was to do that via platform-centric exploration, it has a way to go. The main issue with the character was inconsistent jumping. In other words, he just doesn't sometimes. And that's not a big deal on an open plane, but when I'm trying to jump across platforms and he just smiles as he plummets into the abyss, it's a problem. It's also annoying that he'll struggle to climb up 5 inches one moment while launching himself into the air the next, or that he just veers off at an angle when I'm only pressing one directional key. As for the camera, I don't mind the lack of ability to control it myself, because I can tell the devs wanted to provide a cinematic experience, guiding the camera in a way that tells a powerful story, revealing the world at the right angles on the right marks to immerse the player in the game's beauty and scope. And from a visual standpoint, they got it right. The camera just can't keep up with that ambition once player movement is factored in, and it ends up blocking your view without any clean way to correct it. I also didn't mention the story yet because there are hints of something, but it isn't fleshed out enough to make me care what's going on. The mechanics of the game more than make up for it though, and not to spoil anything, but that moving maze was brilliant. Now, I'm aware that games developed for jams are rough around the edges due to time constraints and limited resources, so I'm not faulting The World Begins With You for having quirks. I'm being hard on it because it's just too good to be derailed by the basics. Overall, I'm proud of what they were able to accomplish here. The game really is a diamond in the rough, and I want to see it polished to a shine. So, in spite of my criticisms, please play the game yourself. You can download it for free on itch.io right now, and if you can deal with these sketchy platforming, you will not regret it.
Number 3.
Released back in 2016, Dark Train is a 2D steampunk adventure handmade from paper cutouts, and I can honestly say I've never played anything quite like it. In it, you make your way from one area to the next, solving puzzles one can only describe as not obviously deceptively obvious. There's a lot of loving detail in the environments, and I adore the overall aesthetic, this desolate mechanical gloom with a cool Burton meets Flat kind of style. And I'm impressed with how well it's animated. But it wowed me most with the mechanics, which are dynamic and in some ways intense, at least in terms of not having any guidance and how that instills a sense of urgency in figuring things out. There's a backstory, but no clear narrative to follow, and you may be tempted to watch a walkthrough, but I strongly suggest trying to get through the game on your own to fully appreciate it. I found it challenging enough to entertain me without feeling unfair, and every inch closer to a solution made me that much more excited for the next problem. That said, I'm a divergent thinker, so Dark Train is right up my alley. If you suck at abstract puzzles and aren't that great at picking up on clues in the environment, the game may confuse you at best, and at worst, infuriate you until you quit and give it a bad review. Because it's one of those games where its strength is also its weakness if you don't go into it expecting that it is what it's meant to be. It's not a standard puzzle game that leads you down a path with familiar crumbs. It's an acquired taste, a walk in the dark for someone who likes discovery. If that sounds like you, then Dark Train is worth checking out. It's only $10 on Steam, or you can try the demo if you aren't sure about it yet. It also has controller support, which you may prefer considering the way the game handles.
Number 4.
Interstellar Prime is a cool hybrid mix of RPG, simulation, and real-time strategy. In it, you play the captain of a starship that isn't the Enterprise, and you set off on a journey to Alpha Centauri in search of an advanced human society that may only be a myth. Now, the game actually surprised me when I played the demo a few months ago because I was expecting something funkier. Whenever I come across games like this, they're typically so crude and poorly optimized that I can't even play them. Interstellar Prime isn't that. It ran surprisingly well on my crap system and looked pretty good from the lighting to the character models and animations. The ambitious goal of merging 3 genres with distinctly different attributes also seems like it would require a lot of compromise, but there are more features than you'd expect here and a level of control over each one that I find impressive. You can manually pilot your ship, visit different planets in the system, and even engage in combat. You can pilot smaller ships, which can dock to your starship, and you can exit the ship at any time to float around in zero gravity thanks to the propulsion system built into your suit. That's probably my favorite part. There are also fun details like the ability to upgrade your living quarters with new decor, or manufacture mods for your weapons and equipment, as well as shifts in gameplay that lend to the incorporation of these other genres, like base building on planets Command and Conquer style, and defending your base from enemies who are after your resources. As someone obsessed with space, I think Interstellar Prime strikes a nice balance between allowing you to explore that beauty while also giving you interesting places to visit on the ground, and I appreciate the attention to detail in the environment. The game does leave a bit to be desired though as far as level design goes, since some areas feel huge with lots of branching paths just for the sake of it. But the way you travel around the ship and other locations is so scenic and satisfying that it kinda makes up for it. I can't say much about the RPG elements, since there wasn't a lot of interaction with NPCs, and what there was felt a bit superficial and buggy as far as pacing and navigating dialogue. So I think a lot of focus will need to be placed on that aspect of the game, since the rest of it seems to be on track. It also wasn't without technical issues. There were a few times my character failed to trigger the next objective, forcing me to restart, and I also got turned around in a cave because the textures all melted together, making it hard to tell the difference between a flat wall and an exit. Luckily, all of the minor problems I experienced were at the very start, and since this was just a demo for a game that isn't aiming to be released until later this year, I don't know how relevant that is. A lot can happen between now and then. I will say that the demo felt more like proof of concept than anything coherent. So while it did give me an idea of what the game may have to offer, I'm not sure how the developer will deliver on that in the full release, especially since there are only 2 people working on the project last I checked. Either way, Interstellar Prime has a strong enough foundation and enough going for it even at this stage for me to recommend checking out the demo yourself. It's an interesting take on genre bends, and I'm curious where it'll end up.
Number 5.
Sometimes you just want to kick back and play a game brimming with charm, and Figment definitely fits the bill. It's an action-adventure game set in a surreal, hand-painted world that would make Dr. Seuss proud, and I was immediately tickled pink with it. There are quaint puzzles to solve and quirky characters to face as you and your companion fight your way through nightmares to restore peace of mind. Literally. And best of all, it's a musical, featuring a full score of vocal performances aside from spoken dialogue, which is also done very well. Sound is a key element used throughout the game in general, with instruments and rhythms cleverly incorporated in the environment and even in some of the puzzles. I actually found myself running around whacking things just to see what notes they'd play and to hear them blend with the ambient music, which in itself was incredible and reminded me a lot of Over the Garden Wall, one of my favorite animated miniseries of all time. The gameplay itself is simplistic, with most of the creativity being found in the mechanics of the world around you and in how the story unfolds. In that way, it feels like a classic, kid-friendly adventure where all you need is to interact and attack. Some may find that boring, but I think the atmosphere of the game carries it, and there isn't a lot that more dynamic combat or complex gameplay would add. It also may seem light on the surface, but its narrative tackles some interesting emotions with mature concepts, so I think you'll come away from it fairly satisfied if you need a little more than gorgeous backdrops to hold your interest. Its humor is worth a chuckle here and there too, though it's likely meant to appeal more to our inner child. Overall, Figment is a sweet little gem perfect for a lazy afternoon. You can pick it up on Steam for $20, which is steep for a lot of people, including myself, no wallet shaming here, so it's up to you if you think it's worth it. You can always try the demo if you want to test the waters first. It also has full controller support, which is something I like to mention because I'm a console gamer at heart, and there are times when you just want that gamepad, man. Now before I go, here's a quick look at some bonus games. And remember, some of the games I'm mentioning in this video are still works in progress, so what I'm showing you may not reflect the final release.
Bonus games.
What is this place? Yup. How can I use this? Good idea. I could do with some fire now. At least now I have more time before I freeze. I need pin number. I need to call 112 for help.
Sir, please, can you help us? We've had an accident. What are you doing? Robert, help! Leave me!
Corruption spilled outward into the stars, twisting the biological matrix of all it touched, integrating it into machines. Mankind's own technology, their own dead, had begun to turn against them.
Seriously? Do you realize crew members suffocated on the lower decks because you routed power from life support to play stupid video games?
Silence, imbecile! They gave their lives for the greater good.
Position holding. Awareness expanded.
That's it for this episode of Toast Bites. If you liked these games, or hated them, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. I'll be back soon with a peek at even more great games I played, but until then, see you on the plate!